This is Abnormal Entertainment.
I've been waiting patiently with my fingers crossed that I'll end up where I'm supposed to be. But these 3-mile back rides uphill kill my knees, and the way downhill is glorious, I've heard. I'm just pushing myself upwards.
Good morning, everybody. This is Daniel Garza. Welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Invite everybody to join us at abnormalentertainment.com for all the shows on the series. Go check them out. I'm sure there's something there for you. If you want to follow me, check me out at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. My handle at Little Mexican, LILMESICAN. Check that out. So go check that out. Now we've launched our Little Mexican Productions page. So go check it out, littlemexicanproductions.com. We can find everything we're doing at the company. Check that out. But for now, just go to Facebook and find out what's going on. Check out pictures, information, things I like, things I don't like. All kinds of stuff are in there. This week, I'm really excited because I have to thank my boyfriend Christian because he helped me set it up. He's my new manager. I think that's what's going on. Actor Mary Pat Gleason, how you doing? Good morning.
Just great. Thank you. Good morning to you.
I felt so bad because I thought I woke you up this morning and made you get up early, but you're an early bird.
I'm an early bird.
That's me too. I can get up early.
I love to get up early because I'm the manager of an apartment building with 17 units, and we're doing some construction and stuff right now. So I can't make it to my car without tenants stopping me. And I write and I do spiritual reading and writing on that in the morning.
Oh.
And I address all my business issues and all of that in the morning. So I get up at sometimes as early as 3 o'clock in the morning, but mostly around 5:30.
Wow. So I don't feel so bad now.
You mustn't feel bad at all. That would be on your head.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad.
Yeah, because I'm an early bird. I'd rather do everything early.
Me too.
Get it out of the way.
I like the morning. It always makes me feel invigorated.
Then in the afternoon, I'm like, it's time for a cup of coffee, relax, sit down.
2 cups of coffee.
Oh, 2, yeah.
I allow myself 2.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
It's a great pleasure.
So tell us, how do you put it together?
Okay, I think I'll start with the fact that I was born and raised in Minnesota.
Okay.
To a family of nurses. Almost everybody in my family was in medicine, including my mother. She was a secretary in pathology. And my brother sold medical equipment, and he was so expert at it that he trained surgeons to use new equipment.
Oh.
And one of the surgeons walked out of the room on him once and said, "Can you close this case?" And he said, "No, I'm not a doctor. I can't touch him." So anyway, it was, so the whole family's, and his wife is a 4-year RN and a nurse. Wow. My family, all of my sisters are hospice nurses, except for my sister Rose, and she is a psychiatric nurse.
Wow.
So all that said, that's my background. And as about an 18-year-old, I went through a huge debate if I wanted to be an actress or did I want to be a nurse. And while I was going through that debate, I worked in hospitals. So I worked as a nurse's aide. I worked assisting anesthesiologist for 2 years. And I also worked as the staffing secretary at the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And I did theater at night. So I had a really decisive incident when I finally decided it was theater. My brother was about, maybe 16 years old at the time, and he had a terrible rocky relationship with my father. And we were watching Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. And my father was a salesman.
Oh, wow.
And he was a kid that didn't show much emotion, except anger.
Oh,
He showed that. But at the end of it, he wept and wept hard, where he bent his head into his lap and wept.
Wow.
And so I held him and said, "What is going on with you, Jack?" My brother's Jackie Gleason.
Oh.
Yeah, that's his name. He's not the great one.
Right.
But he's a great one. So anyway, he said, "Mary Pat, I get Dad now, and I forgive him."
Oh, wow.
And I started to cry and said, "Oh my God, that Arthur Miller, through a play, could heal you years later in your living room and make your relationship better with your father is miraculous. That's healing.
Yeah.
And when I heard myself say healing, I thought, I can get them both. I can do theater and heal. Theater heals. People can sit in the privacy of their own homes and hear their story and feel a sea change in how their emotions have been about something that's going on. And one of my teachers pointed out one time, he said, you know, because I've done a lot of light comedy that I thought, oh, I don't know if this means anything to anybody or if it's very meaningful. But he said, Mary Pat, people sit in waiting rooms who have got terrible things going on in hospitals, and they've got family members that are dying, and they've got people with cancer, and they're watching tough stuff. And one of these silly things comes on and makes them laugh for a few minutes, and that's healing. And I went, healing again. So that was a big thing for me. But anyway, I left for New York from Minnesota when I was 27 years old. I stayed home for 2 years. I was going to leave 2 years earlier, but I stayed home to take care of my father, who was quite ill and would have needed care. And my mother, if she had to quit her job early and take care of him, would have lost her retirement.
Oh.
So my sisters were all married with kids, and there was so much going on that I just delayed my going to New York with my friends and stayed home and took care of my dad for 2 years, which I'm so grateful for, because we had had a couple of incidences in my childhood, that were so bruising and difficult. I couldn't get over them. And I adored my dad. He was hilarious and a wonderful man, but very elderly. He was born in 1901.
Wow.
So, yeah, today he'd be 16 years old.
Wow.
So, and I'm 67, so that's a big difference in age. And he was an old cowboy from the West, raising all these young girls. We had 5 girls in the family, and he didn't know anything about
girls. Wow.
And he really didn't know anything about family. He was practically raised by wolves himself, because he was sent out of his home at the age of 11. And he was sent to a farm because his mother had died and his father remarried, and they had another child, and they couldn't feed that many. So my dad went down the highway to, it wasn't a highway then, it was just a dirt road, to a ranch that broke Mustangs. And they said that they'd hired him at 11, and he was put in a bunkhouse with a bunch of Lakota Sioux Indians. And so he learned to speak a little Indian, and he learned everything about horses that you could possibly know.
Wow.
So that's his story. So anyway, I was taking care of him, this old cowboy. And we talked about the things that had happened, and we wept over them, and they were gone. Tender mercies. So I was grateful I stayed home and took care of him. Because my brother still has some issues with my dad, and there's a couple of members of the family that have issues with him, and I have none. And we probably had the most dramatic difficulty when I was young. But
isn't it interesting how, because it took me some therapy to understand my dad.
Me too. Honey.
And as the therapist walked me through the history that I did know about my dad, and made me walk in mentally or in his shoes, I was like, I get it. It's not that he hates me or hates what I am or what I do. It's just his protection or the way he saw life in his time makes him react a certain way. And once I understood that, I was like, I get you.
Exactly.
I get you.
And I just remember one of the most memorable things that happened with my father.
And the lights come on, we're in the lobby of a Beverly Hills club, and the lights came out when I said that. That's not a sign this morning.
That's God.
That's it.
God.
There it is.
That's love right there. And we acknowledge it. What was I going to say about my dad? Oh, yes, being an old cowboy and raised in the West, and raised, really in a bunkhouse with American Indians, who are beautiful people. Oh, my God, the Lakota have traditions that are so sacred and exquisite. It's amazing. He was too tough on his girls sometimes. He was just too tough. He treated them like they were cowboys, and they weren't. But one of the most magnificent things that ever happened with him was when I was a kid, when they sent up Sputnik, one of the first, aircrafts to go into space. Spacecrafts, it's not an aircraft. But we were supposed to go to school that day, and he was home because he wasn't feeling well, and he said, "Oh, you're not going to school today." And I said, Daddy, we got to go to school. We've got to be. I went to a Catholic school, and it was serious that you had to show up. The nuns were tough on us. And he said, honey, we're conquering space today, and you're going to watch that. This is history in the making. And I thought, here's a man who came across the country in a covered wagon.
Wow.
And he's watching a spacecraft in his lifetime go to the atmosphere of the moon. You know, what an amazing thing. And he also was a pilot, so flight was everything to him.
Oh.
Yeah, he got his license at the age of 27. And we found out that the way that you get your license is, at that time, because there were no airports and, you know, very few people were flying, and they were, you know, aircraft today that would scare us half to death to fly.
Right.
You had to take your engine apart and put it back together to get your license.
Wow.
Isn't that fun?
So here's a man who was a ranch hand, basically, at 11 years old, flying a plane, and wow.
Exactly, it's thrilling.
It's
thrilling.
How did watching your dad and making peace with everything with your relationship, basically, how has that helped you along?
Oh, I have resiliency in relationships that I find so frequently with dear friends. They do not have my resiliency. When I learned early on in life that when I love somebody, that's for forever. But it doesn't mean that I'll tolerate anything from them.
Exactly.
So when they have done something that's so offensive, I need a timeout, or they need a timeout, and it may take years to resolve it. But that doesn't mean I'm not holding them in love. So I have had friends. My brother and I had such a difficult time over my father's funeral that I told him, I said, Jack, I love you so much, and there's nothing I can do about that. That's forever. Love is forever. But I said, you've done things that are so cruel to me that I have to have a timeout on you. So we're not speaking anymore. And I don't know how long that'll last. And you're not telling anybody in the family we're doing it, because you're not going to break Mother's heart or upset the girls. So this is how this is going to go. He lived in Atlanta, and I, by that time, had moved to New York. And I said, I'm going to call on the kids' birthdays, on your wife's birthday, at Christmas and holidays, and ask how everybody's doing. You say to me, fine, and then give the phone to your wife. That's how this is going to go.
Wow.
Until it's done. And it lasted 2 years before he called me one night weeping and feeling bad. And he named everything he'd ever done, including things I'd completely forgotten, and asked me to forgive him. And you know, Mary Ann Williamson, who facilitated the Course in Miracles for years, which is an incredible course. If you can read the book, it's incredible, said, if you make a sincere apology, as far as shaming, almost anything could be forgiven. And I believe that's true. If somebody makes a sincere apology, I think you go right to the love, and the person's so happy to have you back, and that you acknowledge you did something bad, and that if you are contrite and really are sorry, it's over.
Yeah.
It's that easy. It's that easy. Yeah. So anyway, I should probably tell them, because they might be interested in the fact that I'm an actress now. They've learned all about my dad and my brother.
But before we move on, I think it's you're so right on that, because I feel like that's a really important lesson, especially for people. And my show put it together because
and young people,
forgiveness and forgiving
is heaven.
Oh my God! Because
heaven.
Because after rehab, it took me a couple of years to go back to my family. And
I know you've been in rehab.
Yeah, I'm 10 years clean and sober.
Oh, bravo.
Yeah, thank you.
Bravo.
And but I sobered up, and I took a couple of years to really reassess what I'd done to my family and what I put them through.
Oh, honey, good for you.
And then after and I would call, but then it took me 2 years to actually go and visit. And I was immediately received with this wall, and I knew I deserved it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to penetrate. And I took each family member that was old enough to understand and go, I want to apologize. And some of the stuff, like you said just now, some of the stuff they were like, you did that? It's like, I didn't know you were involved in that.
Yeah.
But by then they'd forgotten about most of other stuff, and they was like, "We're just happy to have you back." And
yeah, and the 12-step programs are so brilliant because they give you an opportunity for mercy, because you get to make a living amends, and after a while, even the most reticent to let you in their heart again because you broke it, will rescind that and open their heart to you again because they can see the effort you're making, and it melts them.
And just a mental note for everybody listening, that part, asking for forgiveness is not really about the other people. It's about you just letting go of that guilt and
unpacking those bags.
It's so freeing.
I've done that with Overeaters Anonymous. You know, I've lost about 78 pounds in Overeaters Anonymous.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm thrilled, thank God. It's awesome. All God's business. Yeah.
So we both understand the step work. And
right.
Yeah.
I was a little reticent to talk about it because I think in our anonymity, we're not supposed to publicly announce that we're in a program, but this seems to be kind of a private format that you're doing. So I say to people, just as a caution, don't look to me as an example of how you lose weight. I'm in a working effort. So if you see me and I put on a few pounds, do not think that the program doesn't work. I'm not working the program.
Yeah, I think it's more about the self-growth, because I definitely consider my 10 years clean and sober more about spiritual growth and self-growth and discovering myself and being the best I can be at 46.
And I have found there's another level that I've reached, and particularly this year it's been profound. Excuse me. I feel the presence of the voice of love, which is what I equate with God, so that it works for everybody no matter what religion they're in. And I hear it clearer, and I hear what it's asking me to do. And it's a joy to do the things that I feel asked to do. Yeah.
Good little segue for a question, because this is one of my personal, because I feel like I'm surrounded with really great opportunities, and the universe and God are just opening all these doors.
And you have such beautiful enthusiasm and openness. I bet it is. I bet it's going so fast you don't know what to do.
There you go.
There it happens that way. Somebody said to me, Mary Pat, God's a little bipolar. And I said, I know it. Slow down. I can't handle how fast this is coming.
Do you ever get overwhelmed that you have to just sit on your couch and you go, what am I supposed to do?
I do. But I have, because I was raised Catholic, the cross still means a great deal to me. But I have trouble with the cross because I think that it's not a welcoming image at all of Jesus. So I got a crucifix from Rome about when my sister died. The year my sister died, a priest pressed it into my hand, and I thought, I've never seen such a beautiful cross.
Wow.
It's Christ on the cross with his hands out, no nails, no crucifixion. And behind the cross is is the Holy Father, and his hands are holding Christ to the cross. So he's not doing it alone. And then above him is the Holy Spirit. And I've never really understood the Trinity. And the Holy Spirit appears to be holding God in sacred rays while he holds his son to the cross.
Wow.
And it's so beautiful. So that said, I only described it because when I feel that overwhelm, I'm 67 years old and I haven't got great knees, so it's hard for me to get on my knees. So what I do is I go and stand and put my hands on it and pray and say, okay, if you can straighten out anything as complicated as this crucifix and what happened here, you can straighten out the options I've got in my life right now. So help me know which happens first and how many can I do so that I don't get crazy trying to figure it out. Because I'm no good to you when I'm crazy. I can't hear your voice.
Yeah. I'm going to take that as because I have a crucifix hanging right next to my couch where I sit every day.
Oh, and it means a great deal.
Yes.
I'm telling you, it works for me. If you want to try it,
I'm definitely.
And I always weep. It always makes me weep with gratitude.
Yeah, because there are days when I'm kind of like, how am I going to, I look at my calendar, I'm like, how am I going to pull this off? And then, oddly enough, it always works out.
Yes. It always works out if I surrender.
Yeah.
But I have to get myself to serenity. If I'm running the show, I can't get to serenity.
Yeah. I keep showing God my calendar, and he just laughs at me. He's like,
We'll see what you're going to do.
put that agenda up. I've got other things for you. So, let's talk about your career.
Okay,
a
so
little
let's
bit.
jump to New York. I went to New York at 27, and it took several years of walking dogs and cleaning apartments and waiting tables before I got a substantial, really substantial job. I got my equity card, which is the Stage Actors Union, and I got my Screen Actors Guild card, and I ended up being on a soap opera, The Guiding Light. Now, how do you like that? Guiding Light. And it was originally a spiritual program which was on the radio, and it was guidance for people's daily lives. And it was the most popular and well-listened-to radio program when there was no television.
Wow.
So my family was really excited when I got this job as Jane Hogan, the Baroness von Helkind's secretary. Or maid, really. And it was so funny because I was cleaning houses, and I thought, well, I'm getting paid better, but I'm still cleaning houses. I'm not getting $5 an hour anymore. And anyway, I went to leave that show several years later because I thought, gee, when I took on my career, I didn't want to just be one thing. I wanted to be able to play a lot of people. So I went in and quit, and that night when I got home, my producer called me and said, say, we're wondering if you'd like to be the editor of Guiding Light. Yeah. You're as surprised as I was. And I said, I'm startled, Gail, that you're calling me and asking me to be editor. I don't know anything about tape or film or any of that. And her response was, not tape or film, you idiot. Writing. And I thought, she just called me an idiot and offered me the job. So I said, well, I love writing, but I don't have any professional credits. These are all professional writers. And it's a team of 15 of them, and I'm in charge of all the continuity and the writing. So I said, okay, I'd do it. I said, but I'm doing it under one condition. I want you to retain the current editor for 2 weeks to train me so I know what I'm doing, because I've never done this. So I arrived at the first meeting. He'd been fired an hour earlier.
Oh,
so
wow.
I went, but I thought, just calm down, you'll figure this out, you'll get it. Well, anyway, jump ahead 2 years. And we won the Emmy for Best Written Show, so I got an Emmy as the editor, which is utterly shocking. I never had any dreams about writing. I hold writers in such high esteem. I never thought I could compete with writers or join writers. So you're okay with all that?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So anyway, I wanted the Emmy, but I had my first bipolar episode 2 weeks before the presentation and was hospitalized. I was madly in love with a young man that I found out later on was madly in love with one of my dear friends. And that dear friend, they were both lying to me about their relationship. And she was married. So her husband had said she could spend as much time as she wanted to with him as long as I was present. So they told me a bunch of lies to make me go out with him all the time, and I thought he was in love with me too, but it was a mess. Well, anyway, it broke my heart and obviously my mind. One night I had found myself after a 5-day period. We put him in an alcohol clinic. And when I met him, he never drank. So it was funny when he did start to drink, I thought, gee, if he has a beer or two, it changes his personality. How weird.
Wow.
So anyway, it led to his being diagnosed, and we committed him to the hospital. And the first night that he was allowed visitors, because they had like a month where they couldn't have visitors.
Right.
And she and I went together, and we determined that she should go speak to him first. And after they had spoken, they had gone up a stairwell to a room above. When she came out on the stairwell with him, they were holding hands and looking in each other's eyes. And for the first time, I looked up and went, oh my God, they're in love with each other.
Wow.
And then I went upstairs with them. She came downstairs, and my mind was just blown. I mean, I had no time to respond or have any emotional feelings about it. So I went up the stairs with them, and we sat down, and I don't even know what we said to each other, just a couple of things. And then all of a sudden, he jumped up and came over to my chair and hugged me and hugged me and hugged me and said, I have told you so many lies. Well, no, I'd not been sleeping because of concern about him, and I was afraid I'd enabled him and that I was responsible in some way, and I hadn't seen the signs. And so I had been up all night reading the big book every night, and I could read, and I didn't pay attention to the fact that I could read the big book in its entirety in one night.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's like 450 pages of pretty dense stuff, and boom, I was going through it. But I was pretty fast as an editor. I could read fast.
Oh, yeah,
and I could do things. So I had some skills. So I just thought, God, my skills are sharper than this.
On the bright side.
Right. So what happened was, after he had said, I told you so many lies, I went home, and I only weighed 125 pounds at the time. I'd gotten so thin because he had been involved with a very top-notch model prior to being involved with me. And I thought, I'm not as pretty as she is, I never will be, but I could be thinner and I could do everything I can to make myself prettier. So I was doing all sorts of things to try to make myself better looking. And anyway, so I came home and I bought cigarettes, and I was smoking 2 packs a day, and I was drinking pots of coffee and eating very little food. So I came home and I smoked, and I got in the shower, and I stood under pouring hot water, and all I could think were, what were the lies? What were the lies? And he had told me once he wasn't in love with me, and I thought, maybe that's a lie. Maybe he really is in love with me. And I was very agitated and moving. And so I went to the phone and I called the alcohol clinic, and I said, the recovery clinic, and I said, I want one of you, a professional, to go in and speak to him and tell him that I am withdrawing with love. I think I'm sick, and he can't help me, and I can't help him at this point. Well, what he did is he called my best friend, and he called a bunch of people, and I calmed down. I showered, smoked a cigarette, drank a pot of coffee, and went to bed and fell sound asleep. Well, about 2 hours later, or even an hour later, there was just pounding on my door in my apartment, and I went to answer it, and the secretary of my best friend was at the door, and she said, everybody's worried about you, and their clinic is calling, and everybody's wondering what's going on with you. And she came in, and that morning, prior to her coming and prior to my going to bed, I had looked out my window, and the sun was just coming up, so it was really early in the morning, so I'd been up all night from that experience at the clinic with him once again. And I looked out the window, and I had a beautiful tree in my courtyard in New York, and I was in a 4th-story walk-up, a brownstone. And I looked out the window, and all of a sudden all the leaves shimmered away from the tree, and it was just bare branches. And I looked through the branches, and there was a man curled up in a window of an apartment across from mine, on the outside ledge of the window. And he looked East Indian to me. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I went, no! Because I thought he was going to jump, and he smiled and shimmered away. And then all of a sudden the leaves appeared back on the tree again, and I thought, what was that? And then I thought, maybe it was a past life remembrance. Maybe we do reincarnate, and I just had an opportunity again in space and time to tell him not to hurt himself.
Wow.
And then I thought, I wonder if that's a projected suicide wish. I better call my therapist, because I'd hired one because I was having so much trouble in this relationship. So I called my therapist, and she said, look, the thing that calms you down most is walking around the reservoir. I can't see you right now because I'm with a client, and I don't think I'm going to be able to see you till 12 o'clock. So you go to the reservoir and walk around the reservoir, and then come home and drink a glass of wine and calm yourself down and go to bed, and then I'll call you when I can. So I thought, I don't know if this is a good idea for me to go outside to the reservoir in New York City, but anyway, I went. So I was walking around the reservoir, and my heart started to pound so hard that I could see my blouse moving over my breast or over my heart, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack. So I laid down on the track to try to calm myself down, and these people were walking by, and they leaned over and they said, are you okay? And I'm so Midwest. I said, yeah, I'm fine. And they said, are you sure you're fine? And I said, well, not really. My alcoholic is in love with my best friend, and I think that he's been telling me a lot of lies, and I'm confused. And I saw a guy try to commit suicide, or I think he did. Maybe it was and I realized how crazy that was, and they looked like they,
Wow.
Their eyes were spinning, and I thought, I better go home. I don't think I'm safe out here. So I got up and started to walk home, and that's how that day went. So I went to bed, and then this is when my friend came in. Well, that day escalated very fast.
Wow.
She called the other friend in. They were all making phone calls from my bedroom, and then finally one of my dearest friends that I'd known for years, since I was 18, called up and said, I am worried sick about you, and I'm coming over immediately. I want to see you because I don't like those people that are there. I don't think they know you well enough to be handling this. Well, when the doorbell rang, it was her husband, who was also my dear friend. We'd all met at the same time, and they'd fallen in love and gotten married, and they were both my dear friends, old soulmates, really. Well, he came in, and he didn't approve of these friends. He didn't feel that they loved me enough. And he was right.
Wow.
They didn't. They were lying to me. So, anyway, he said, we're going to go to Central Park. And I said, Central Park's not such a good idea. And he said, I want to talk to you alone, and I can't get you alone in the apartment. That's where we're going. And I thought, all right, if he's going to insist. So we walked back to Central Park, and by now it's night. So it's dark in Central Park. You know, there's just street lights. And he starts talking to me, and he says, you know, I know that you think that your alcoholic is your soulmate, but maybe there aren't soulmates. And I said, well, your wife Susie is your soulmate, Lenny. That's your soulmate. And he said, well, I'm Jewish, and we don't really believe in soulmates. And I said, well, my alcoholic is my soulmate, and it's going wrong, and that's bad. And he said, I just don't think he is. And I uncharacteristically jumped up and said, if you don't believe me, I am going to kill myself. And I started running towards the traffic in the streets in New York.
Oh, my God.
And he, who is a total pacifist and the gentlest person in the world, I've never even seen him yell at somebody, came running after me. And he's big. He's, you know, close to 6 feet tall and substantial. And I only weighed 125 pounds. We wrestled in that dirt in Central Park, and he had to hold me down, and I'd get up again, and he'd drag me back by my leg, and he'd have to hold. Well, finally, in the middle of it, I started to laugh. And he said, what are you laughing about? Because he was so distressed. And I said, oh, Lenny, look at us. You think I'm not sick? Look at what we're doing. You think I'm not sick, honey? And he had yelled while he was wrestling with me, if you kill yourself, then I'll kill myself. And I said, you just threatened to kill yourself, honey. I need to go to a hospital. You can't handle this.
Wow.
So he said, okay, and we went home. And in a very fast period of time, he and the two girls were in my bedroom, and I could hear everything that was being said on the phone besides what they were saying. So my hearing had gotten very acute. I could hear everything they were saying. And I heard things like, she's suicidal. I think she's going to have a heart attack. We can't calm her body down. We can't do this, you know. And then they said, yes, we'll bring her to the neuropsychiatric ward. Well, my only experience with psychiatric wards was movies, the Snake Pit and things like that. And I thought, oh, my God, what are they going to do to me there? Oh, my God. And I was alone in the living room saying, oh, my God. And I threw both my arms out and said, oh, God, and looked up. And an energetic heat took a hold of both my hands. And I looked and there was nobody there, but I knew in my heart that two angels were holding my hands. And I thought, I'm going to go to the hospital with angels. I'm not going to do this alone. And just then, Jesus came walking down my hallway, carrying his cross and looking like he was carrying the burdens of the world. And he walked down the hallway, and when he got in front of me, he looked at me, and I went, oh, no, Jesus, is this my cross to bear, mental illness? And he looked at me, and it was a little sad, and then he looked away, and then he shimmered away. So
Wow.
I thought, what am I going to do when I go to the hospital? I'm going to have to say that angels are holding my hands, and Jesus was in my hallway, and I'm going to get locked up forever. They'll never let me out. So off we went to the hospital. And I said, because you're supposed to go in an ambulance, and you're supposed to be strapped down in a straitjacket. And I said, please don't put me in a straitjacket. Just don't humiliate me any further. This is I don't know how to handle this night. I don't know what's going on anymore. So they said, we'll take you in a cab if you behave.
Okay.
Can I take a little bit? Anyway, suffice it to say that my recollection was that they gave me 10 hypodermics to try to put me to sleep, and I wouldn't go to sleep. So they were very worried at the hospital. And these were internists that were there on that midnight shift to morning. And I had a roommate who was a homeless woman, and she stole my cigarettes and all my clothes. I thought, oh my God, insult to injury. Now I haven't got anything to wear, and I don't have a cigarette, and I'm a mess. So anyway, they put me in a locked, closed ward. And I have to say, I'm only going to tell you a little bit about that because I think because it frightens people. It was tough. But I was in a 4-bed ward, and one of the girls, I hope you can see this, was menstruating. And she was in terrible shape. So there was blood all over her bed and the floor, and when I went to use the bathroom, it was all over the toilet and the sink and the tub, and I thought, I don't know anything about this girl, and I have a hospital background, and I knew that I probably had lost another 5 pounds and probably weighed 120 pounds and was so frail. I thought if I make contact with this blood, I'm going to be really vulnerable. So I was scrubbing. I decided, because I was a cleaning lady, I thought I'm just going to scrub it all off. So I was washing the tub and the toilet and the sink when I heard, Mary Pat Gleason, is Mary Pat Gleason here? And I came out of the bathroom, and there was a man who looked like Father Christmas. He was over 6 feet tall, huge man, but not an extra pound on him. He had silver hair and a shock of it. It was just lots of beautiful wavy hair. And clear crystal blue eyes, and a light seemed to be emanating out of his eyes. And I thought, who is this? And he said, I'm your doctor, Dr. Rosenberger. One of the most magnificent human beings on the planet, and my friend Susie had found him, and I thought, Susie's an angel too, and she found him. So I thought,
amazing.
Okay, yeah, so I thought I've got an angel for a doctor. And he said, what were you doing in there? And I told him what I was doing, and he said, oh, you can't be doing that. That's not good for you. So he said, I'm going to take you across the hallway. In a locked, closed ward, there's no meeting room to be able to meet with your doctor. And there's lots of stuff going on in the hallways, and they were straight jacketing a girl, and that was a big fight, and lots of hypodermics, and lots of drama. And I was terrified. I just was in a world I didn't know. And he took me across the hallway, and he said to me, I want to know, are you suicidal? And I said, why would you ask that? And he said, well, your friend Lenny and I talked. I said, oh, I said, Dr. Rosenberger, when I told Lenny that I'd kill myself, do you think there's any way in the world I wasn't safe? He threatened to kill himself rather than allow me to do it. And he said, I got you. You were safe. And I said, he wouldn't have let me come to the hospital without a drama. And I didn't purposely do that. Something, an instinct in me knew that I couldn't allay his fears in the shape I was in, that I needed to come to professionals. And he said, I got you, you're okay. And he said, what's going on with you? And I told him about the man in the window and Jesus Christ and the angels. And he said, very calmly, he said, yeah, this happens to a lot of you. And I said, what do you mean by you? And he said, well, I think that you're manic depressive, or what we call right now bipolar disease. And I think we're going to put you on some lithium. And he said, I'm going to get you out of this ward as fast as I can. That may take 2 days, but this isn't where you belong. And I said, Dr. Rosenberger, do people in a locked psych ward, do they just have to ask and you'll let them out? And he said, no, stop taking care of people. You're not here to take care of people. You're in trouble. Let's just take care of you. Do not tell your roommates that they can get out if they just ask. And I said, well, how come I get to? And he said, because you're actually okay. The big drama in your life is over now. And I said, I'm not even properly medicated. And he said, but you're back. So he put me 2 days later on a medical floor, and I was out in 8 days. And what's really interesting about that is my mother and my sister had gotten a phone call from a psychiatrist who had seen me before I went up to the locked ward, and he had told them, she's got manic depression, and this break is so bad we're going to have to airlift her to Minnesota, and she may be institutionalized for the rest of her life.
Oh, dear.
And my mother fainted and dropped the phone, and my sister had to pick it up. That's how bad my mom took it. So my mom was about 78 years old at the time, She's diabetic and not an athlete, so she hadn't been working out. But although she was in pretty good shape, her diabetes was tricky. So on the 7th day that I was in the hospital and they released me, which she just couldn't believe, and it was Easter Sunday, the resurrection. The resurrection. That was not lost on me. I wept all day.
Wow.
She came and to the hospital and said, I'm here to escort you home, and I came to New York and I'm going to be with you for a week. And I thought, I wonder if this is going to be a good idea. So anyway, we get to my apartment and we walk in, and she sits down in the living room, and I said, let me fix you a cup of coffee. And I went into my little tiny kitchen area, and because it's a brownstone, and it was a 1-bedroom, but it was small. And she was kind of looking at magazines, and while I was making the coffee, I heard my phone go off. And I heard this. Hi, Mary Pat, this is Sally Watts, and I'm calling you because you left a message for me. I'm a relaxation therapist, and I wanted to set up an appointment with you. And that's all the further she got before my mother said, what on God's earth is a relaxation therapist? And I said, I put my stuff down and I just said, well, Mom, a relaxation therapist might be able to help you with your high blood pressure and diabetes, because what they do is they teach you how to breathe and calm your body down, and you can, and I got about that far, and she said, oh my God, the day I'd go see a relaxation therapist is the day I'd wake up in the booby hatch. And I said, I walked in the living room and I said, well, I am going to go see a relaxation therapist because I did wake up in the booby hatch. I said, I can't believe you said booby hatch to me on the day I got out of one. And she said, do not tell your sisters that I said booby hatch. And I said, I'm not. I'm going to tell my doctor you said booby hatch to me the day I got out of one.
Let me write that one down.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So anyway, we did go to my therapist the next day, and she insisted on seeing him alone. And once again, such a respectful man, he came to me and he said, are you okay with me seeing your mother alone? And I said, Dr. Rosenberg, that's my mother. She loves me. Of course you can see her. And she's terrified right now. And she thinks that's what's happening with me is her fault. So she needs a therapist. And he laughed, and they went into the room, and they talked for a while, and then she came out. And then I came in, and he said, so what's going on with you and your mom? And I said, we're not going to talk about that visit. And he said, no, you made it private, so it's private. And I said, okay. I said, I told him about the booby hatch, and he did not laugh. And then he said to me, do you actually think that's funny? And I said, Dr. Rosenberg, if you weren't a doctor and you weren't under a code of ethics, you would have fallen out of your chair. That's so funny. I said, my mother is just one of many people who are going to call me crazy nuts, or those freaking people who are on lithium, and why didn't they put him on lithium? Because he's nuts. I've heard them all. Now I'm one of them. Now those names will sting, or not. But I said, booby hatch for my mom is hilarious, that she'd say booby hatch to me of all things after I'd been in that dramatic experience for 3 days. So anyway, he said, you're a good sport, Mary Pat. And then he said to me, I want to recommend a book to you. And I said, okay. And he said, I want you to read The Genius's Disease. And I said, The Genius's Disease? And I said, are you trying to kid me that you think I'm a genius? I was practically a straight D student. And he said, yeah, well, a lot of you are. And I said, a lot of us bipolar, you again? And he said, yeah. And I said, Dr. Rosenberger, I'm a smart street girl. I know people, and I'm smart about people. But I'm not a smart girl. And he stopped, and he said, I want you to take a deep breath. And I did. And he said, do you actually believe what you just said to me? And I said, I can prove it to you. I can show you my report cards. And he said, oh, that's interesting. He said, Mary Pat, do you realize that when people are as bright as you? And he said, I think you might be one of the brightest women I've ever met. When people are as bright as you and they keep saying they're not, the obligation is to everybody that you meet who says it to fix it for you. And you won't let them. It's a bad way to operate. It's bad communication. It asks too much of somebody who's just said, I want to validate that you're smart. And you say, I want to tell you you're an idiot if you think I'm smart. And he said, do you see how that goes? And I said, I do. It's bad, isn't it? And he said, yeah. And I said, I will try to get behind my being smart. I'll try to, but I said, I can't get behind my being a genius. I'm sorry, I'm slow in the draw there. And he said, well, I'm not. So I said, okay. So anyway, that was that. And then 5 days later, when my mother was still there, one of the writers that I worked with at Guiding Light called me up and said, you're not going to believe this. We're nominated for Emmys for the best written show.
Wow.
And I said, well, I'm not in any shape to go to an Emmy ceremony. What am I going to say? Gee, thank you for this Emmy. All it cost me was my mind. And she said, no, you're not going to say that. And I said, I know I'm not going to say that, but I can't go to it. Well, then she calls me 3 days later after the ceremony and said, you're not going to believe what happened. And I said, what? And she said, when they presented the Emmys, they said, Guiding Light wins for the best show. And then they read all the writers' names. They were the writers from another show. They were from The Young and Restless. And I went, what happened? They said, they made a mistake on the card for the first time in the history of the Emmys. They made a mistake. We won and they gave our awards to somebody else. And I said, that's so bipolar, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And she said, they're going to make it up to us, though they're going to have another ceremony. It's going to happen in 2 weeks' time because it takes 2 weeks to make all the Emmys, and they won't give theirs back because they were presented them on national television. They're not going to give them back, nor should they.
Right.
So, but you can only make as many Emmys as you're giving out because it's a national award, and they have to be made by a specific company, so they had to make them for our team. And she said, you are going to that ceremony, and you're going with me, and you are going. So we went to the ceremony, and we won our Emmys, and I did not say thank you. Thank you for this Emmy. It all it cost me was my mind. I was a good girl. But we went to the bathroom later, and there's no place to put your Emmys. So you have to take them to the bathroom with you. So we've got our purses and our Emmys, and we go to the bathroom and sit down in the toilets, and we set our Emmys beside us. So there's these 2 Emmys on the floor of the toilet. And we're in there going potty, and all of a sudden she said, can you believe we won Emmys? And I said, I can't believe we won Emmys. And I was locked up in a hospital in the psychiatric ward, and I just got an Emmy for writing it. Anyway, we went potty, we washed our hands, and as we were washing our hands, a woman came out of one of the other stalls, and she said, all my life, I have wondered what really happens at an awards ceremony when you get it. And she said, that was pretty fun.
That was pretty primo.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Well, we're getting down to the 45-minute mark.
Yes. I have one other little story
sure, please.
and it'll finish this up so well. Anyway, after that, I thought, I've won an Emmy. I'm out of my mind. The 2 people who were in love with each other, my alcoholic and my girlfriend, I kept seeing all over the neighborhood, kissing on the streets and doing things. I thought, I can't get well in New York. I can't watch them be in love. It's too painful. So I decided to come to New York. And one of my friends go to Los Angeles. And one of my friends from Los Angeles sent me a card. And the card said, congratulations, you won an Emmy. You got your heart broken, you cleaned houses, you walked dogs, you had a nervous breakdown. You've done New York. Come to LA.
My God, if that's not just a primo LA.
And the funniest thing was, I arrived in Los Angeles and found a psychiatrist that day. And I used to say to my friends, I arrived in Los Angeles and within minutes found a psychiatrist. It's like they're waiting at the airport.
You have definitely lived the New York life and
there's
the
LA life.
Yeah, no, nothing else. If you added a slice of pizza to that, then...
And I always did. Yeah, I was 120 pounds, I could have pizza.
Yeah, that's the perfect New York. Now that I've been to New York, I can picture it. Yeah. Well, I'm just blown away. And when we started the conversation, I was like, I want to hear the stories that people don't know about you, and then this is definitely...
They don't know that.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a one-woman show in June at
yes.
the Presbyterian Church on Hollywood Presbyterian on Gower, just below Franklin, or just above Hollywood Boulevard. And I will be announcing those dates and doing some things. And this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm sharing 3 different stories, and when I come out to the audience, I say, these are the 3 stories. I can tell you about my attempted suicide. I can tell you about Lorenzo's Oil and shooting that film, or I can tell you about Holy Matrimony. All of them are interesting. Some of them are a little painful. Which would you like to hear? And I'm going to have the audience vote.
Wow.
So I'm just going to spontaneously tell them whatever
I am
story.
so going to be there. I am
yeah,
so going to be there.
And I'm hiring psychiatrists to be in the house and to be sitting out in the lobby, because I have found people with mental illnesses, when I tell these stories, they start to have flashbacks and they get upset.
Yeah.
And I'm not available to comfort them, so I'm going to have medical professionals there.
That is an
who will be
amazing
handling
idea.
them so that they can get up and walk out if they're in trouble and somebody's right there to help them.
Wow, that is so cool. Well, I'm going to tell, this conversation went in a totally different direction
Then
I've talk about the calendar and my plans, and God said, nope, this is
Me
a
too,
big conversation.
honey. I didn't know what I was going to say today. You're such an invitation to tell the truth that I
Thank
thought,
you.
just tell the truth.
Part of the tradition of my show is to shed some words of wisdom with my listeners. What words of wisdom would you share with them?
Well, particularly addressing this, if you have a mental illness, if you've been diagnosed, writing down your story and reading it to your psychiatrist instead of telling them is infinitely better than sitting in a room wondering what you're going to say or waiting for them to ask something interesting. Write your story down to the best of your abilities that you remember and share it. That confessional atmosphere is the same thing as a great apology, and it's an apology to yourself. And when you share it with the psychiatrist, they have so much more they can say to you because you've revealed things they don't know how to get out of you. And healing happens from that. It happens from that.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I work with the Mayo Clinic right now, the mood disorders. One of my internists, that was my internist on my attempted suicide, is now the head. He created the mood disorders clinic.
Wow.
And I work with him and talk to psychiatrists through his auspices. When he asked me to come and fly in and talk to them, I do. And they are now all doing this. They're getting their clients to write everything down and come in and talk to them. And then they talk about what they've written.
Wow, that's pretty
It's
cool.
brilliant.
I'm going to introduce that into I do a web series where we do horoscopes and we help people spiritually grow. And I'm going to introduce the writing your story
Brilliant.
idea.
Brilliant.
That's so...
It's very healing because people say, how come you got the recovery you got? And then they say, well, maybe you just didn't have it as bad as I did. And I said, I've been institutionalized 6 times. I've attempted suicide. I wandered the streets of Los Angeles for 4 days in one episode. And I had to leave a court case because I had a manic episode in front of the whole courtroom. I've got it bad. Don't think I don't. I've just got recovery you haven't got, and you can get it, and I can help you.
Yeah, it's not exclusive.
It is not. No, God's everything.
Exclusive. Okay, so here's the only acting question that I'm going to ask in this whole conversation. How has everything that you've been through helped you in your career?
Well, the actors that I admire most, like Daniel Day-Lewis and I think Meryl Streep and Benedict Cumberbatch, and there's a bunch of them. I think they're channelers. I think that's why we love them so. I think they bring their whole body and their whole heart and their life experience to a part. But I think they have tremendous humility, and they wait on inspiration to see what the character has to say to them. And then they perform, and it's different than other actors who have an idea about how somebody will behave. They find themselves probably doing things they didn't even know they were going to do.
Right.
And I've worked with a couple of them, and I've watched how they work. They work in a lot of silence, and it's sacred. And it's beautiful, and I've learned from them. So I think really fine acting is a form of channeling.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because my listeners know my story, being diagnosed with AIDS at 30, alcohol and drugs, cancer, ostomy.
Cancer, me too.
Yeah.
I had a hysterectomy 2 years
Yeah,
ago,
and-
and I just
oh,
had
me
a cancer
too.
removed from my nose. You didn't have a hysterectomy.
No. But my cancer was 2 years ago.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm awfully glad you didn't have a hysterectomy.
No, I didn't.
Really
No.
tough on you.
I still want to have kids at one point.
Good.
But no,
You'd be a
mine was
great daddy.
mine was anal cancer, and I would say
honey.
it was a pain in the butt, but it's behind me now, so
Well,
we're good.
I said I'm not really concerned about this hysterectomy. I can't have babies at this age anyway. There's not very many 65-year-old women having babies.
If you look in the
But I've had a
Inquirer,
million in my life, so I don't. feel
yeah,
sad
that's
about
how I feel. I have a lot of adopted kids, so I'm good.
Me too.
Yes,
Me
we're
too, I'm
good.
glad.
I just feel like I thought it was going to be really easy to pull on all my tragedies for like a real dramatic scene. But I've overcome a lot of it. I hope it doesn't sound conceited.
Oh,
but I've overcome.
No, that's so encouraging to people who know you can rise above it.
Yeah, I made peace with who I am physically. That when people ask me, well, remember when you were sick? And I'm like, well, I would make butt jokes when I was sick. When I had cancer.
This is the problem. Good writers know the truth. All of these things we go through are laugh, cry things. And people try to make them cry, cry, cry. And they're not. They're laugh, cry.
Yeah.
Just like coming out of a psychiatric ward completely devastated, brokenhearted, having lost the love of my life, paper thin, and also I lost my job. The job was over.
Wow.
So I'm out of work. And I'm home and I'm frail and my mother is worried and she wants me to fix her worry. And I can't. I'm worried.
Yeah.
And she says booby hatch to me. And I just thought, what can you do? That's my sweet mom and she loves me. And she just said I was a booby and a booby hatch. You're a booby for saying it.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
But I think I hope that the listeners get out of this that no matter what the universe, God, the world throws at you, that you think it's so horrible, there's always a silver lining. Always.
I am most grateful to the people who have been most difficult in my life because they're the ones who moved me to activism, and I'm an activist now.
Yeah.
I work with mental illness, and I am determined we're going to solve the problem of homelessness.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it compassionately and kindly and find them jobs in the real world. What is it that you can go into a bank or a grocery store and there's nobody in a wheelchair, there's nobody with one leg? What's happening? Where are they working?
Yeah.
I want them back in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find it more interesting now, and I think this conversation comes at a perfect time. Obviously, I was diagnosed with depression and PTSD due to health issues after everything I've been through in my life, and the last several days have been working my brain, trying to figure out why is it that everything in my life looks so good on paper, but from the inside out, I'm going. I'm dying in here. Like I can't get happy. Like what's going on? And so this conversation could not have happened
that's just
at the most.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For me too, honey. Because I've been wondering how am I going to do this one-woman show without rehearsing? I've rehearsed all my life, and you have just proved to me that if I come out and trust God and just tell the truth, I'm going to be okay and it's going to be interesting. If they don't laugh and fall out of their chairs, that's okay.
Yeah. No, and there's definitely parts in this conversation where I was like, you can't write this shit up. Like this, there is like,
the truth is so much better than
isn't it?
Yeah, it's better. And we
I
can handle it. People don't tell the truth. Sometimes they're afraid. Well, they're always afraid. But I'm not so afraid anymore. I've been loaned to courage from the force of love that has made me think that I could participate in healing, and that gives me courage.
Yeah, there's stories of me almost dying, seeing light.
You're my brother. How do you do? Welcome to my world.
Yeah, because I do, well, my listeners know this too, I do energy work, I do Reiki, I do card readings.
Me too.
And so...
I don't do the readings, but I participate in them, and every time I go to a psychic, they say, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I came for a reading, and I paid you $150, and they said, you know.
Yeah.
And they were right, I do know.
And so for my listeners and people that know me, for me to talk about almost dying and seeing a light, they're like, well, of course you did. Like, but I'm like, no, but let me really tell you what I saw. And when I hope we can sit down again and have another conversation.
We're going to sit down many times. I can tell that we've just begun a friendship.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
I appreciate it too. I humbly thank you for and the opportunity.
We're coming to the end of the show. I didn't think we were going to do an hour, but we did a whole hour show.
Wow.
So, I know, right?
I hope they enjoy it.
For everybody listening,
I love listeners. I think they're sacred. They allow us all to heal ourselves by bringing their sacred listening to what we've got to say. And thank you, all of you who listen to this.
And what better to do a show with this kind of conversation in a lobby that's just manic in itself.
Exactly. And we managed to stay on track.
Yeah. I think that gives us some credit.
You bet you should see the things we've been seeing.
Well, Mary Pat Gleason, thank you so much for doing this again. I want to thank Christian for setting this up for us.
Oh, God bless Christian.
He's a great. I think he's moved up from being my boyfriend to my manager now. He's setting up all my stuff.
Well, he's getting his categories straight.
Yes. I hope I don't have to pay him anything because I don't have any money.
I think the payment is you love him. That's the best thing.
Don't tell him that. It'll go to his head, and then
I think he knows it.
I have to work with his ego now too.
And he does have one. I've seen that.
Oh yes, terribly. Yes, terribly.
Daniel,
well, thank you.
Lovely thing.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
for your treasured friendship and your kind questions and your beautiful attention.
I'm just so excited. Like, just listening to your story. I wish we had more time, but we'll have more time. We will. We'll have to have a pot of coffee and sit down
Or a dinner.
Yes.
Or we can sit for several hours and chat.
Even better.
Yeah,
I love that.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, I want to
God
thank
bless everyone.
I want to thank Mary Pat Gleason for being on my show. This is just exciting for me. I'm shaking with excitement.
And I couldn't be happier. That makes me feel so glad.
But everybody listening, thank you, my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Go visit us at abnormalentertainment.com where you can get all the shows on the network. Find me at littlemexicanproductions.com or on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Little Mexican, where you can find all stuff about my shows and all the people that I talk to. I will have information on your one-woman show when it comes out. So
Absolutely. I would love that.
Yeah.
Boy, if I didn't have to send out 1 million flyers, it'd make me so happy.
Yeah, we
I'd
will.
love to send it to your audience. If they're interested, I guarantee it'll be an interesting night in the theater. It will not be boring.
We'll definitely make some promo videos before then and put them out.
Terrific.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. Oh, my God, how great.
We'll get it all together. We want to see that. So for now, from the Beverly Hills Community Center, this is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.
I'm only 19 years of age. I found peace right in this cage, holding tightly was my brain, wondering how long it will take.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Messican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.